Life's always been straightforward for me, Evelyn. At 68, after losing George, my world shrunk to the cozy corners of the house he built and my job at the local store. But it ain't all gloom. My son, Daniel, is my beacon of pride. Working his way up in a big-shot investment firm, he's done well for himself, better than I could have dreamed. Then came Sophia, Daniel's shiny new wife. Picture perfect, she was everything society stamps with a seal of approval: beauty, brains, and a background dripping with privilege. I was thrilled, to be honest. Daniel seemed happy, and that's all that mattered to me. One lazy Sunday, Daniel brought her over for dinner, a sort of informal welcome to the family. I had spent the better part of the day fussing over the roast and setting the table just right, wanting everything to be perfect. "Mom, this is Sophia." Daniel introduced us, his arm around her like she was a prize he'd won. "Nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Evans," Sophia said, her voice smooth as silk but somehow lacking warmth. She handed me a bouquet of flowers, expensive-looking ones, not the kind you pick up from the corner store. "Please, call me Evelyn." "And those are lovely, thank you," I said, putting them in water. I wanted to find some common ground, make her feel at home. Dinner was a dance of awkward silences and forced conversations. Daniel tried to bridge the gap, bless his heart, talking about work, the house, anything to keep the chatter going. "So, Sophia, Daniel tells me you're quite the traveler. Been anywhere exciting recently?" I asked, trying to sound as interested as I could. "Oh, you know, the usual spots. Paris, Milan, Tokyo. It's all pretty standard, really," she replied, a hint of boredom in her voice as if she'd done it all 100 times over. I chuckled, a bit too loudly. "The farthest I've traveled is the state fair. Can't say I've had the pleasure of seeing much beyond our little town here." Sophia gave me a look, one of those "oh, you poor thing" glances, and I felt a pinch in my heart. Daniel noticed, jumping in with a change of topic. "Mom's the best saleswoman the store's ever seen, though. She could sell ice to an Eskimo," he said, trying to lighten the mood. Sophia smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That's quaint. Must be a real skill," she said, her tone suggesting anything but admiration. The evening dragged on, with me trying to crack through Sophia's polished exterior and her giving nothing away. It was like talking to a wall, a very pretty wall, but cold and unyielding nonetheless. After they left, Daniel lingered for a moment. "Thanks for dinner, Mom. I know Sophia can be a bit, but she means well," he said, looking a bit embarrassed. "I know, dear. She's just adjusting, that's all." "Give it time," I reassured him, though deep down, I wondered if Sophia and I would ever truly get along. Lying in bed that night, I couldn't shake off a feeling of unease. Sophia was now part of our family, whether I liked it or not. I had always dreamed of having a daughter-in-law, someone to share laughs and secrets with, but this wasn't quite what I had pictured. A few weeks after the dinner, Daniel had to travel for work, leaving Sophia to fend for herself. He asked me to keep her company, and I thought, why not? Might be good for us. Little did I know, it had opened my eyes to a whole new side of Sophia. I invited her over for tea, thinking it'd be nice to chat without Daniel around, maybe get to know each other better. She arrived looking like she stepped out of a fashion magazine, while there I was, in my usual sweater and jeans combo. "Thanks for having me over, Evelyn," she said, her voice lacking the warmth I hoped for. "Of course, dear. I thought it'd be nice to spend some time together, just us girls," I replied, pouring her a cup of tea. We sat in the living room, surrounded by the knickknacks and photos that made up my life story. I started talking about Daniel, thinking it'd be something we both cared about. Daniel was always such a curious child. Always asking questions, wanting to know how things worked, I said, chuckling at the memories. Sophia sipped her tea, her face blank. I suppose that's interesting. But really, I don't see the point in dwelling on the past. It's not like it changes anything," she replied, her tone sharp. I was taken aback, but tried not to show it. Well, I just thought it's nice to remember where we come from, helps us appreciate what we have now. She rolled her eyes, setting her cup down with a little too much force. Look, Evelyn, I get that you're trying to bond or whatever, but honestly, I don't see the value in these old stories. I mean, considering your background, I'm surprised Daniel turned out as well as he did. Her words felt like a slap in the face. I struggled to maintain my composure, not wanting to stoop to her level. And what's that supposed to mean, Sophia? I asked, my voice steady, despite the anger boiling inside. She shrugged, a smug look on her face. Nothing really. It's just, you're from a different world than us. Daniel's done well for himself, despite his humble beginnings. The room grew tense, the air thick with unspoken words and brewing conflict. I wanted to scream, to tell her off, but I bit my tongue. Daniel didn't need us at each other's throats. Sophia, I've always wanted what's best for Daniel. I've supported him every step of the way, and I'll continue to do so. I don't appreciate your insinuations, I said, my voice calm but firm. She laughed, a cold, harsh sound. Oh, please. Spare me the self-righteous act. It's clear you're just clinging to Daniel because you've got nothing else. It's pathetic, really. I stood up, my hands trembling with rage. I think it's best if you leave now. We clearly have nothing more to discuss. Sophia stood, smoothing her dress with an air of indifference. Fine by me. This was a waste of time anyway. Just remember, Evelyn, Daniel's mine now. You'd do well to keep your distance. She walked out, leaving me standing there, seething yet heartbroken. How could my son be married to someone so cruel? I worried about him, about what this meant for our family. But I knew one thing for sure, Sophia had shown her true colors, and I couldn't just ignore it. After that tea disaster, things between me and Sophia went from chilly to outright frosty. Daniel was stuck in the middle, bless him, trying to play peacemaker in a war he didn't start. The real storm brewed the day Daniel decided to help me out with a bit of money for some repairs around the house. The old roof was leaking like a sieve, and I mentioned it offhand during one of his visits. Don't worry, Mom. I'll sort it out, Daniel had said, always the problem solver. He left a check on the kitchen table before he left, a gesture that warmed my heart but lit a fuse somewhere else. A couple of days later, Sophia cornered me at a family gathering, her eyes shooting daggers. Evelyn, a word? She hissed, pulling me aside with a grip that meant business. What's on your mind, Sophia? I asked, already bracing for the blow. I found out about the check Daniel gave you. Don't you think it's a bit tacky, taking money from your son? Especially when he's got his own family to think about now. She spat the words out like they were poison. I was taken aback, not just by her nerve, but by the accusation itself. Listen here, Sophia. Daniel offered. I didn't ask for a dime. He's my son, and if he wants to help, that's his choice. Sophia scoffed. Oh, please. You've got him wrapped around your finger, don't you? It's pathetic, really. You milking him for every penny. The words stung, but I stood my ground. It ain't like that, and deep down, you know it. But if you're so concerned, maybe you should talk to Daniel about it. He's a grown man. He makes his own decisions. Her face twisted into a sneer. Oh, I will. And I'll make sure he sees this for what it is. You're nothing but a leech, Evelyn. And I won't stand by and watch you bleed my husband dry. I was about to give her a piece of my mind, but then I saw Daniel, looking at us from across the room, a puzzled frown on his face. I didn't want to make a scene, not there, not in front of everyone. Whatever you say, Sophia. But remember, family is family. And Daniel is my son before he's your husband. Don't you forget that, I said quietly, turning away from her smug face. Months had rolled by, each day stretching longer than the last as I tried my best to steer clear of Sophia. It wasn't out of fear, mind you, but more of a peacekeeping mission on my behalf. Then, out of the blue, Daniel and his wife decided to grace my humble abode with their presence. Sophia's mood was as stormy as a winter sky, her face set in a scowl that would sour milk. Daniel, ever the beacon of positivity, seemed oblivious to the dark clouds hovering over us. "Hey, Mom. I'm planning a big birthday bash at our place next Saturday. You've gotta be there. It just won't be the same without you," he announced, his usual enthusiasm undimmed by Sophia's glower. As they were about to leave, Sophia lagged behind, ensuring her next words were for my ears alone. "You know, Evelyn, it really wouldn't matter if you skipped my party. Nobody would miss you. The guest list is pretty exclusive, important people, not your crowd. You'd stick out like a sore thumb, embarrass yourself even. You don't belong there, with your simplistic views and manners." Her words were like a slap in the face, but they lit a fire in me instead of knocking me down. This had gone too far. Sophia's insults were becoming more pointed, her disdain more openly cruel. It was high time I took a stand. I decided then and there to start documenting her barbs, every single snide comment and disdainful glance. But I wasn't about to show my hand just yet. This collection of insults would be my secret weapon, kept in the shadows until the right moment came to light. I plastered on a smile, though it felt more like a grimace. "Oh, don't you worry about me, Sophia. I wouldn't miss your party for the world," I responded, my voice steady though inside I seethed. The drive in me to stand up to Sophia's bullying was stronger than ever. But more than that, I wanted Daniel to see the true colors of the woman he had married. Not out of spite, but out of a desperate hope for my son to recognize the toxic presence in his life. The air was crisp and filled with the scent of autumn as I made my way to Daniel's house, the apple pie cradled in my arms like a delicate treasure. It was his favorite, a recipe passed down through generations, perfected over a lifetime of birthdays and celebrations. Despite the warmth of the pie against my skin, a cold knot of apprehension settled in my stomach, knowing Sophia's disdain awaited me. As I stepped through the door, the buzz of the party greeted me, a stark contrast to the storm brewing within. Daniel's smile was a beacon in the sea of unfamiliar faces, his happiness momentarily dispelling my worries. "Mom, you made it. And you brought the pie." His enthusiasm was infectious, but it flickered out as soon as Sophia appeared by his side. Sophia's eyes narrowed at the sight of the homemade pie, her lips curling into a sneer. "Oh, how rustic of you, Evelyn. Bringing a homemade pie to a birthday party. How quaint," she said, loud enough for her nearby friend to overhear, her tone dripping with sarcasm. Her friend, catching on to Sophia's mood, chuckled dismissively. "Really, Evelyn, you shouldn't have bothered. We have a caterer for that." The laughter that followed from her circle felt like a slap in the face. Retreating to a corner, I fumbled with my phone, the decision to record her cruelty solidifying with each passing second. As I discreetly pressed the record button, my heart pounded, not just from fear, but from a growing sense of injustice. I forced a smile, placing the pie on the table, my hands trembling. "It's Daniel's favorite. I thought it would be a nice touch," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. Sophia leaned in, her voice a venomous whisper meant for my ears alone. "Well, next time, maybe consider that we have standards here. I doubt anyone will even touch it. Might as well feed it to the pigs." Throughout the evening, Sophia's jabs came quick and relentless. "Evelyn, darling, that dress is a throwback, isn't it? To what era? I can't quite place. You really should try and keep up with the times. There's a thing called fashion, you know," she remarked loudly, her friends snickering in agreement. Trying to mingle, I complimented a guest on her dress, only for Sophia to interject. "Yes, it's lovely, isn't it? Something Evelyn here wouldn't know much about. But we can't all have taste, can we?" The night dragged on, each minute stretching into eternity. Sophia's words, each more cutting than the last, echoed in my ears, a relentless assault on my dignity. Honestly, Evelyn, it's a miracle Daniel turned out so well, coming from, well, you know. But I suppose we all have our crosses to bear, she said, a mocking sympathy in her eyes. As I prepared to leave, my spirit battered but not broken, Sophia delivered her parting shot. Evelyn, really, it's been enlightening having you here. But perhaps next time, consider if you really fit in with our crowd. It's important to know your place, after all. The drive home was a blur, tears streaming down my face, not just from the hurt but from a deep-seated anger at the injustice of it all. My phone lay beside me, a silent witness to Sophia's true nature, every harsh word and mocking laugh captured within its memory. The Thanksgiving dinner was more than a feast, it was my battleground, the stage for a revelation that had simmered beneath the surface for too long. The house was filled with the aroma of roasted turkey and the chatter of arriving guests, a mask for the tension that knotted my stomach. As the evening unfolded, Sophia maintained her polished facade, exchanging pleasantries with the guests, her laughter a little too bright, her smiles a tad too strained. Daniel was by her side, the perfect host, unaware of the storm brewing on the horizon. Once everyone had settled, plates heaped with food, the moment I had been dreading and anticipating in equal measure arrived. Clearing my throat, I stood, glass in hand, the room gradually falling silent in expectation of a toast. I want to thank everyone for being here today. I began, my voice steady, despite the tremors that shook my hands. Thanksgiving is a time for gratitude, for family, and for reflection on the blessings we have. Sophia's gaze was fixed on me, a smirk playing at the corner of her lips, as if challenging me to step out of the line she had drawn in the sand. I've always believed in the goodness of people, in the strength of family bonds, I continued, locking eyes with her for a moment before turning to Daniel. I'm grateful for my son, for the man he has become, and for the love he has always shown me. A pause, a deep breath, and then I plunged into the heart of the storm. But sometimes, we are tested. Not just by the circumstances of life, but by the people who enter our lives. We learn that not everyone shares the same values of kindness, respect, and humility. Murmurs filled the room, curious glances exchanged. Sophia's face had drained of color, her eyes darting nervously. It has come to my attention, I pressed on, that not everyone thinks I belong in this family. That my ways are too simple, my dress too outdated, and my presence an embarrassment. A collective gasp rose from the table, eyes now wide, fixed on Sophia, who looked as if she wished the ground would swallow her whole. I've always believed in facing things head-on, in honesty and integrity. So, it pains me to share this, I said, my voice quivering with emotion as I reached into my pocket, pulling out my phone. I've recorded some of these sentiments. Not out of malice, but out of a need for truth. With a trembling finger, I played the clips, Sophia's voice, unmistakably clear, spewing venom and disdain. The room was deathly silent, the only sound Sophia's voice echoing her true feelings, her insults, her lack of respect for me, for the family traditions, and for the values I held dear. As the recording stopped, I looked around at the shocked faces, then at Daniel, whose expression was a mix of horror and disbelief. Sophia was on her feet now, her chair pushed back with a clatter, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. This is what I've faced, I said softly, the room hanging on my every word. I don't seek vengeance, only understanding, and perhaps, a bit of empathy. Sophia fled the room, her departure a silent admission of guilt, leaving a wake of stunned silence. The guests, once jovial and engaged in light-hearted banter, now looked on with a mix of horror and disappointment. Sophia's parents, particularly, seemed crushed under the weight of their daughter's actions, their faces etched with deep shame. I can't believe what we've just heard, Sophia's father said, his voice barely above a whisper, his eyes wet with unshed tears. We're so sorry, Evelyn. We had no idea our daughter could be so cruel. Her mother added, her own voice choked with emotion. This isn't the girl we raised. To be so hypocritical, so petty, we're deeply ashamed. Please forgive us. Daniel, my son, his face a mask of pain and regret, approached me slowly. Mom, I don't know what to say. I'm so sorry. I should have seen this. I should have done something sooner. His voice cracked, betraying his inner turmoil. He continued, a determined edge to his voice. I won't chase after her. She needs time to think about her actions. And believe me, we're going to have a very serious talk about our future. This isn't what I signed up for. Standing there, amidst the aftermath of truth laid bare, I felt a wave of calm wash over me. It was a strange feeling, knowing that standing up for myself, exposing the bitterness and cruelty for all to see, had led to this moment of vindication. I've always believed that you reap what you sow, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. Evil can't go unpunished. And today, well, today was about setting things right. The room, once filled with the sounds of celebration, was now heavy with reflection and the somber realization of the hurt that had been caused. But amidst the discomfort and the apologies, there was a sense of closure, of wrongs being acknowledged, and the faintest glimmer of hope for healing and forgiveness. Daniel nodded, a silent promise in his eyes that things would change. And as the guests began to murmur amongst themselves, a consensus was reached. Today had been a revelation, a turning point. 2 months had trickled by since the echoes of Thanksgiving had faded into a tense silence between us all. The chill of winter had set in, bringing with it a sense of reflection and, for me, a sliver of peace in the solitude of my home. That peace was shattered one morning by the shrill ring of the phone, breaking the quiet like a siren's call. On the other end was Sophia, her voice tinged with a desperation I hadn't heard from her before. "Evelyn, I'm at my wit's end here," she blurted out, skipping the pleasantries as if our last conversation hadn't ended with cold finality. "Daniel's shut me out completely. He's talking about getting a divorce, and he won't listen to anything I say. You have to help me talk to him." Her words, demanding and sharp, sparked a fire in me, a mix of indignation and disbelief. How could she, after everything, still see me as a pawn in her game? "Sophia," I replied, my voice firm, "why on earth would you think I'd intervene on your behalf? After the way you've treated not just me, but Daniel as well?" There was a pause, a hitch in her breath. "Because you're his mother," she said, as if that explained everything. "Surely you don't want to see your son go through a divorce. You can convince him to give this another shot." The audacity of her request left me momentarily speechless. To think she still believed she could manipulate the situation to her favor showed how little she understood about family, about respect. "Listen, Sophia," I began, my patience wearing thin. "My son's happiness is my only concern here. And it's become painfully clear that being with you isn't what's best for him." Her voice cracked, a blend of anger and sorrow. "But we can fix this, can't we? I mean, everyone makes mistakes. I need a chance to make things right." The plea, had it come from a place of genuine introspection, might have tugged at my heartstrings. But Sophia's track record spoke volumes. Mistakes can be forgiven, Sophia, but only when there's true remorse and a willingness to change. Actions speak louder than words, and yours have caused nothing but pain and turmoil. You're just going to let your son get divorced? Just like that? Her voice was rising, a mix of incredulity and accusation. Daniel is a grown man, and he's made his decision. He's thought long and hard about this, and if he believes that divorcing you is the path to his peace and happiness, then I support him fully. This isn't about what I'm letting him do. It's about respecting his choices as an adult. There was silence on the line, heavy and uncomfortable. Finally, she spoke again, softer this time, defeated. "I just thought. I hoped you'd see my side. That you'd want to save our marriage. My son's well-being is my priority, Sophia. It's time you start reflecting on your actions and their consequences. Maybe then, you'll start to understand why things have come to this point." The call ended shortly after, a quiet click echoing the finality of our conversation. In the weeks that followed, Daniel moved forward with the divorce proceedings. It was a period marked by quiet contemplation and, for Daniel, a reclamation of his sense of self, away from the tumultuous marriage that had weighed him down. As for me, watching my son navigate this painful chapter was heart-wrenching, but in his resilience, I found a strength I didn't know we had. We talked more openly than ever before, about life, love, and the importance of respect and honesty in all relationships.